Ready. All right, thank you all for being here. Start with kind of some injury deal. Appreciate everyone that's reached out about CJ. He's recovering. He's in our concussion protocol. What really want to credit at the start our medical staff, but also Texas's medical staff and their operations at the stadium. I thought they did an incredible job helping, and so want to recognize them. We got beat up pretty good in that game. I don't want to comment on anybody else until later in the week, but had a couple significant injuries. I think we had 4 concussions in the game. So I'll try to do, as we get into Baylor prep later in the week, kind of give you a better idea. But got beat up pretty good. Kind of recap the game. Disappointed in how we played. Really expected Texas to fast start. That's kind of who they've been, and that's kind of how they've played over the last couple of years with Sark. Didn't think we handled adversity very well at all in the first half. Didn't start the game bad. We had a productive drive. We punted. Defensively, had a great first series. Get the ball in the short field, and then had a drop on third down. Had a drop on the fourth and short, and really I didn't think we handled it after that. Credit, we did bounce back and competed better in the second half, but it was a little too late. And I don't want to discount Texas. Credit to them. I think Bijan Robinson and Xavier Worthy are special. I think Hudson Card played at a high level. Thought their interior defensive line really controlled the line of scrimmage. We were unable to get up to the second level in the run game, and that was a huge factor. I think I shared with you all. It really felt like there was 4 keys going into the game, and those keys were really based on kind of the history of Texas over the last 2 years. And the first one was the turnover margin. Ended up being 0-0. Offensively, we took care of business, held on to the ball, which is important. Defensively, we had 2 opportunities. One on a fumbled snap that we didn't get on that could have really been a huge momentum change right there because it was coming off their end zone. And then the second one is we dropped an interception that ended up turning into a touchdown for them. So 2 missed opportunities there. The second key we felt like was a rushing battle. Defensively, I thought we did a nice job, in the running game. They had 110. I think a lot of those yards were in the fourth quarter as they went into more of a 4-minute mode. So I thought that while the game was in question, we did a nice job limiting their run game, which they're really talented at running back. The flip side on that, offensively, is we didn't run the ball very well at all, and a lot of that has to do with Texas, their interior. They won that battle, and then Overshawn had a really good game, and so I think the rushing battle ended up being 110 for them, 61 for us, and it's going to be a real struggle for us if we're only rushing for 61 yards, and we're better than that. We're more capable than that. The third key was explosive plays, and they had 11, we had 6, and so and that was kind of the story of the first half. A lot of explosive pass plays. We missed some tackles in the run game where they were able to get a couple as well, but it wasn't close. 11-6 is that's a huge differential in number from an explosive play standpoint. And the last factor was special teams field position, which was close to even. I think they won it by maybe 1.5 yards. But we were 0 for 4, and going into the game, we felt like if we could win 2, we had a really good chance. We win 3 of those, then we would win the game, but we leave there and we're 0 for 4. And that's kind of the story of it. And so that's kind of Texas, heading into kind of a pseudo bye week, really. Gave them off Sunday and Monday, which we've had a tough, first 5 weeks. So I think that was warranted. We'll practice today. We'll meet with them this afternoon. It's the first really time that we've seen them since then, other than being in here for treatment. And then practice today, tomorrow, Thursday will be off, and then we'll start our Baylor prep on Friday. So normally in a bye week, as you all know, you get a weekend off, and they can usually go home and those type of things. But because of the schedule, that's not going to be the case here. And we got 2 basic bye weeks. We'll get a bunch of our young developmental guys work today and tomorrow. And then we got things we got to work on. Special teams wise is, emphasis point is going to be on our return teams. We got to get some production out of our kickoff return. We haven't to this point. And then we've done a good job pressuring the punter as far as from a block but we got to be able to set up some returns for our punt. And then offensively, we got to create some depth at wideout. We didn't play as good at that position on Saturday, but I think some of that is, we played our 3 top guys a lot of snaps, and so we've got to create some depth there. Jeremiah Aaron, Reese Smith's capable. Both of those guys are capable of playing more, and then we got to get Cortez Braham going. Defensively, we just got to work on our fundamentals. We got to do a better job getting lined up, and our pass coverage fundamentals have got to improve. And so, and from a personnel, we got to figure out our best guys and play our best guys. So that's something that we'll work on this week before we start Baylor prep. So with that, I'll take questions.
Neal, start with what you're talking about there, the personnel. Obviously, I assume you mean secondary. Are there really options there, or you just got to get?
No, we just got to figure out who the best are. That wasn't just a secondary issue the other night. We didn't play in the first half. We didn't play good at any level. We left plays out there with our defensive line. At linebacker, Jasir Cox, I thought he played a good football game. I wouldn't characterize any of our other linebackers as playing good. And then the secondary piece is, we just weren't good enough. And Xavier Worthy's a really good player, okay? But, most of the plays he were making weren't contested plays. And so that's where the issue is. And we've got some guys that we got to figure out what our best pieces are back there. Are there other people that we can play that we haven't given an opportunity to yet? Are there guys that played in the second half that maybe deserve playing more? Because we play a lot of bodies in the second half there in the back end. And so those are things that we'll try to evaluate really in depth today and tomorrow as we do some scrimmage type things with some of our development guys. And we'll use that as an opportunity for guys to prove they're ready or not ready.
You mentioned kick return. You tried some different guys back there. Mm-hmm. How do you kind of solve that issue?
Yeah, it's not as much a returner issue as it. Well, first of all, it's the world kickoff returns change. The kickers are really, really good. And so we basically had, I think, 5 opportunities. This is off the top of my head, okay? So I think we've had 5 opportunities, 2 of them versus Pitt. One of them was a squib kick. One of them was a really high kick. And in both of those balls, one of them we should have let go in the end zone. One of them we should have fair caught, okay? We had one versus Kansas that we didn't block very well, that we had a real opportunity to return. And then we had 2 the other night, the outside of fair catches, that we had an opportunity to return. And so we've got to do a better job in winning one-on-ones, right? Our returners got to do a better job of just trusting the return and hitting it. But it's a little bit of both. It's not as simple as saying, hey, we got to put a different returner back there, or our returners aren't good enough. It's we've got to be able to block. We got to win some blocks there as well.
Coach, not to talk about kids who got hurt, but
yeah.
Concussion protocol in general, if I could for a second. From what I understand, it's a medical staff thing, right? It's not really in the coach's hands, and are there's certain stages they have to go through? I mean, I'm unclear on what the protocol actually is.
So first of all, our medical people handle all of it, and what we talk about is if we think there's something off with a kid, alert our medical team ASAP. And that happened with 2 of the guys that suffer concussions in the game. Is they're a little off, and we're like, hey, you need to check them. And so as far as the return to play, that's something we really probably, it's really pretty standard across football in general. And it's probably something, Monty, that we should probably have. Vince could probably talk a lot more informative than I can. But there is a strict return to play, and that we have to follow here, and I'm zero involved in it. All I do is ask the question, and they don't even start the return to play until they're symptom free, and so that's why you see some guys take quite a bit longer than others. Now CJ, he will be out for the Baylor game. I'll say that. He'll be out. The rest of the guys, I think it's too early to make a determination on.
Are the protocols themselves, is that West Virginia or is that a Big 12?
I don't really know. I've never really asked that question. I'm looking at Monty like, hell, he'd know. He doesn't know either. I'm like, I don't even want to speculate. I kind of do what I'm told on that. Like there's certain things that I don't touch, and that's one of them.
Neal, run game and the blocking from the offensive line have been very good the first 4 games. It was something they were doing wrong against Texas. They just get overpowered.
I think there's 2 things. Like there's 2 things. First of all, those guys are good players. We talked about them going in, so they're good. Because I don't want to discount that. I mean, their D tackles are good players. I thought their edge players played better in that game than I'd seen them play thus far, and so that's credit to them. On us, as we didn't do as good a job getting movement. I thought our IDs, who we were identifying, was good. Our communication was good. We didn't do a good enough job getting off our double teams, getting movement on our double teams, and then getting off to the second level. Their Mike and their Will were making plays untouched, and so we've got to be better at that. And then schematically, we've got to continue to grow, and there's some ways we can tie up the extra defender, and we've had good answers through the first 3 games or through the first 4 games. In the 5th game, some of our answers weren't as good. Now, some of that's because, we went into it thinking we were going to be in a bunch of 12 personnel in the game, and then when Mike got hurt and played 5-6, something like that. So that was a piece of it. And then and the other thing, credit Texas, they played a little bit different front. They played more of an odd front than they had shown to this point.
Thoughts of JT, how he played? I know he was under a lot of pressure in that game.
He really wasn't, though, John. No, he really wasn't. He got hit a couple times, but he really wasn't. They got some push on the pocket. They got the one where they called for roughing. They got one where, 2 of them were kind of coverage pressures. But I really think that our offensive line did a really good job in the pass protection standpoint. We were on the right people. I thought our running backs, Justin and Tony, both did a great job in pass protection. And so we really didn't have a protection issue other than they were able to get some movement because they're so big and got some push up the middle. They maybe altered some throws. But from an overall pass protection, we did a quality job. I thought JT, he played well. We don't necessarily want to be a team that's throwing the ball as many times. We had to throw drop back passes the other day. I think that's difficult. There's a few throws I'm sure he'd love to have back, but he also made some really tough plays. So I think he continues to play at a high level.
When they do come out with something different than you've seen on tape, I imagine you don't want to just burn the game plan. How long does it take to huddle and figure out what they're doing, and specifically, do they just have a guy from the outside coming in faster on you than anticipated?
Yeah. So here's what they. So they slid over and played more of a head-up nose, which that's an easier adjustment because you just go back to the plays you like versus that front, okay? Now you may not have as many reps as you would normally have during the course of a game plan or game week on certain plays. So there's just some give and take on that. And then we've got to do a better job of what you're talking about. They were doing a really good job getting their nickel in the box, and he wasn't necessarily getting there quickly, but he was playing close enough where he was making tackles for 2 and 3 yards, and that was to the field and to the boundary. They did a nice job getting their safety, or they were bringing a corner blitz to getting their 7th hat over there to the boundary. And again, they weren't necessarily making tackles for loss, but they were getting there and making where in the games previous we were either tying up that guy or we were either running through breaking tackles or making that guy miss, and we didn't tie up that guy as much as we needed to, and we didn't break tackles or make them miss like we had through the first 4 games.
12 personnel, not to give you an excuse here, but 12 personnel helps you out there, I guess.
So what the 12 personnel does, what it does is it helps you on the edge. Yeah, it helps you on the edge, and so that was probably the biggest adjustment from a game plan standpoint. Is we went into it really liking some of our matchups in 12 personnel and how we were going to use those and how we were going to tie up some of our edge people. And so then we basically we didn't really have that after, whatever play Mike got hurt, 5, 6, something like that.
You talked about the drops, and you talked that JT played pretty well and made some tough plays. What was the cause of the drops? It looked, amateur observation. It looked
a good
like
question,
timing
Mike.
was messed up somewhere along the line, and sometimes he had to throw off his back foot, and the ball wasn't getting there on time. What was the reason behind it?
Yeah, so if you go back and look, and I think after watching it, we probably had 7 drops in the game, and 6 of those are by the wideouts. And the timing was fine. That really wasn't an issue. It comes down to fundamental errors. I mean, really. And there's going to be a certain percentage. Like I always talk about, you want to catch, plus 90% of the catchable balls. And if you do that, there's going to be times where you do everything right, and for whatever reason, you just don't make the catch, right? But you need to catch 90+% of your balls. And so obviously 7 is not catching 90%. And so when you go back and look at what are the reasons, well, some of them, were just straight fundamental issues. And so a big thing when you're catching the ball is you want to catch the ball in front of your face. Anytime you're catching the ball here, that's an easy track, okay? When you start trying to catch the ball here, now you have to track that ball all the way behind, and that's a really hard track, okay? It's the same when you're catching a ball over your head. Good thing we're not doing radio here today. But when you're catching the ball over your head, okay, this is an easy track, all right? If you have your hands here and your hands are high, that's an easy track. So, like, if I'm catching the ball over my head, but my hands are high, then that's a pretty easier track right there. Where it gets really difficult is if your hands get low, and now if I'm catching the ball over my shoulder, I've got to track the ball all the way here. And so those fundamental things, like having your hands high, having your hands out in front, when you come out of your break, a bad habit is having your hands down. So if you come out of a break, like if I'm running a comeback and I'm turning here and my hands are down, now when I get out of my break, my hands got to come all the way up here. If the timing is right on the route, it can really get on you fast. But if you come out of your break and your hands are up, then you're not adjusting. And so a lot of our drops aren't necessarily hand-eye coordination issues. They're hand placement and really fundamental issues. Now, I don't know if that may be too in-depth, but.
Coach, there's been like 20 Big 12 games played already, something like that, 19. Really, except for maybe the Kansas-Iowa State game, they've all been sort of higher scoring kind of games. Your games have been, 20s and above. As you game plan moving forward, do you almost kind of have to start taking that kind of stuff into account? Like, hey, we're probably going to be in some shootouts maybe.
Yeah. I don't think it's quite to the point it was maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago. But I think some of the scoring will slow down a little bit the more video that's out there too. The more film that – because there's really good defense coaches in this league. So the more film that's out there, I think you'll see that come down a little bit. But there's some really good offensive personnel in the league. We have good offensive personnel. Texas has good offensive personnel. Kansas, I can speak to all three, because I see them face. They got really good offensive personnel. I haven't started digging in on Baylor just a ton yet. But there's a lot of really good offensive personnel, and there was a lot of graduation on the defensive side. So there's a lot of older defensive players that were in the league last year when it was really a defensive dominant league that are gone. So everybody's a little bit younger defensively. But I do think some of the scoring will slow down as these defensive coaches have more film and there's more tendencies out there.
Neal, if you're talking a lot about the receiver drop issues maybe being fundamentals, so what do you do to correct that? Does that just go back to the drawing board? And then how does JT get involved in that? Because obviously there's been a lot of conversation of him being so smart, almost being a coach on the field as well as a QB. So can you use him more than maybe a QB without his acumen
Yeah.
to also kind of fix this issue that I imagine is also a frustration for him, even though he's also trying to help the guys.
Yeah, it's probably not. Y'all haven't got to know him a lot. Not a whole lot bothers him, so he just kind of rolls off of him. He handles it better than I do probably. But no, it's really not something that he can help with. All he's got to do is continue to trust and deliver the ball where it's supposed to be. The fundamental issues, catching balls comes down to this. It's a repetition. You got to continue to rep it. You got to correct the mistakes, and then you got to continually put them in situations in practice where they have an opportunity to utilize the skills that you're working on. And so, I wish there was a magic button. I wish it was something that JT could really help with. It's really not. It's just about repetitions and you catching balls and making sure your hands are in the right spot, and then going into practice and doing it in a game-like situation.
Neal, open week, always a good time to talk about recruiting a little bit. So your thoughts when the year started, what you wanted, how you feeling that?
Yeah, I think from a recruiting standpoint, we're still in that same area. I think high school wise, we'd like to be in the low 20s probably. And then, when you get into transfer season, whenever that new portal date is, sometime in December, I think you start having an idea what your needs are. And so the plan is really we'll stay consistent with that. We'd like to continue to add, a few high school guys. We got to hold on to the commits we got, and add some guys. Really locked in on some guys having some really good senior years right now, and so excited about those. We've gone out a little bit. We'll get out this Friday a little bit more locally, and then we have the Friday after the Baylor, which will be a big recruiting day as well.
Preseason, you guys were kind of committed to playing less so, more man, just to be more diverse. Just perception, it doesn't seem like you're playing a ton of man. Does that?
Well, we did week one.
Right.
We did week one, Mike, and then when Charles got hurt, and then Kansas, because their option, they don't allow you to do that. Touchdown we gave up against Virginia Tech was man, and then the touchdown, the Worthies double move, we were in man the other night, and so we've played. Probably if Charles was playing, we played more. And then when we've played it, it hasn't been as productive as we would have liked it to been. I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, I was kind of getting to that. Just where your hands kind of tied with personnel or game plan. I was going to say Kansas in particular, but
Kansas really ties you because when you're playing against that type of offense, you want to have more eyes. So when you play man, you can't have eyes on the option game. The last 2 weeks we would like to have played more man, because I think it helps because it allows you to bring another one in pressure. But when we've done that, we've been burned a little bit.
Is it not necessarily a corner concern? Like you have to have safety so it has to be back.
Yeah, but I think that's where we've got it. That where we've given up plays has been at the corner spot in man.
Subsequent decisions you make of playing time. Would you want to go more toward man, and maybe if somebody or some people can do that, they might.
I think we got to be able to change it up, but at the same time, we've got to play a coverage that we can get lined up the fastest in, okay, and that gives us the best opportunity to be successful. I would like for that to include man coverage, but if that's not the case, I don't think we can force it either.
Coach, I'm assuming on top of being a coach, you're also a fan of college football. If I could tap into the fan side for a second, what does it say? What does it mean that here we are almost in the middle of the season, and Kansas is undefeated, top of the Big 12, and obviously they've been traditionally the other end.
Yeah, I think it in terms of college football, the top teams are still the top teams, right? I think there's probably a clear line between the real elite teams, and that's probably been the case for definitely a few years, but when you get out of that elite group, there's probably not a whole lot of difference between the next 30 plus, and to a point where, really anybody from middle of the road, top 25 team to down into your 50s in the Power 5, got a chance week in and week out. So I think that's for sure the case. I don't we obviously played Kansas, so I know more about them. I think that the Jalen Daniels kid has been a huge factor in what they're doing. I think they've played opportunistic defense, and they haven't done things that hurt themselves. I think that's kind of how they got to this point. And so that's a credit to them. But I don't know if I see, I still think there's, at the elite level, I think there's still a separation there.
Do you want to piggyback off of that? Based on the way the Big 12 has kind of unfolded so far, there's conversation of the Big 12 maybe cannibalizing itself and not having a chance at the playoff this year, and obviously that's going to expand. But you brought up the defensive concerns, and that's also been a conversation over the years that maybe the Big 12's issue overall is the defenses haven't been good enough to get in that elite level. Is that something that gets in your mind in terms of recruiting or in terms of fixing it if you want to get beyond even the conference, that this conference overall, especially the team, has to improve defensively to get in that elite group?
Yeah, no, I thought we had several probably great defensive teams the last 2 years. Right. So I think that is kind of over it. I think scoring is up across college football, whether it's Big 12, SEC, whatever league we're talking about. So I don't think that's an issue. Now, we are the only league that everybody plays everybody, and I think 1 through 10, this league is, I think everybody has an opportunity to beat everybody else on every Saturday, which I don't think is the case in other leagues. The other 4 Power 5 leagues, I don't think there's a legitimate chance that 1 through 10 or 1 through 14, whatever it is, and the other 4 Power 5 leagues have an opportunity to actually win games. I think that's the case here. I think it'll be really hard for somebody to go and run the table in this league. I'm not saying somebody won't, but I think it'll be really hard. It wouldn't shock me if the winner of our conference has 2 losses, And so as far as playoff, I think it's really early to talk about that. But I do think the league – there's parity in the league, and I think sometimes that word is used negatively. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think there's a bunch of really good football teams in our league.
Back to recruiting real quick. Changes, obviously the portal's a huge change, but the numbers have changed too, and what you're allowed. How has that changed what you do and what you look for?
Well, I think you're always in an evaluation mode, both your own roster and what you can bring. I think that it's changed a good deal. It used to be, you knew you had 85 and you knew what your initial number was going to be. And so you kind of worked on that number, and there may be a little bit of a variance to it, but not much. Now you really don't know. And so I think it's more about how do you want to handle the percentage of high school compared to the percentage of transfers. And that's how you got to do your planning, Greg, and that's kind of where our numbers come from.
Have a percentage number that you set?
We've got a ballpark, based on, and it's always you're making an educated guess, right? Educated guess on who potentially could transfer it out of your own program. Educated guess on, how many people might use their extra eligibility, who might not. Where you're going to have position of need, where you're not, you know what I mean? So, we've got some broad, nothing I would want to share publicly, but we've got broad, but it's not like, hey, we're going to take 75%. It's more of, hey, in certain position rooms, that's kind of how we've gone about it, is in this position, hey, we need young bodies here that develop. Maybe we need an older person in this room.
Looked like you had Bill Mahad back at corner.
Yeah.
Wilson Lamp played a bunch. I guess curious those 2 guys how they played, and I think you said you would look at younger safeties too. I don't know a lot of names back there.
Well, we from a corner perspective, we've been searching a little bit. Plus, we had 2 get injured in the game, and so Mumu's been working at both. He played at corner, and I think he played 16, and Lamp played 20 or low 20s in the game. And I thought both of them did some positive things for their first action against Power 5 level talent. I thought both of them did some things. They also did some things that hurt us as well, And so, but they did play, And I think they both showed signs of potentially being able to help us there. And so we'll continue to give them opportunities. Those are two guys that are going to get long looks on Tuesday or today and tomorrow.
Any other update on Charles Woods? Because the conversation before was that he's fighting to come back at some point this year.
And that's still the hope. The hope is that he's able to come back. He's closer. Rehab's going well, so I'm cautiously optimistic that he will return.
Laughlin, what,
Yeah, I'm gonna wait. He's getting checked out this week, and so kind of let y'all know later as we get into Baylor prep.
All right. Thank you, Coach.
All right, thank y'all.